好，各位专家选手，晚上好。
Good evening, dear experts and contestants. Welcome to the online training for the blockchain. Today is the fourth day of the training, and I'm the lecturer today, Du Shengfei. Today's content will include the introduction to Go language and to its functions, the web structure, Go web structure, about the smart contract to use the Go SDK to call the smart contract. First is introduction to Go language. Go language is similar to C language or C++ language. It was developed by Google, and it is an open source programming language which can be used to write some simple and useful applications. It is a statistically strong typed language, compiled language, and has a function of recycling. Compared to other programming languages, for example, the C languages, although it has high efficiency in its development, but we have to manage its storage manually, and it's easy to suffer from security problems, and the development is difficult and it takes too long to develop. And Java relies on the Java virtual machine, and the operation cost is relatively high. Python has a concise grammar, but as it is a dynamic interpreted language, which is different from Go language, that means the Python will run slower than compilation language. The advantage of Go language, it runs faster, but it's slower than C language, and it's faster than Java, and it's way more faster than Node.js and Python. The compiling speed is very fast, and compared to other static language, it has fewer keywords. It's 5 to 6 times faster than C++ and Java, and 10 times faster than Scala. And it accounts for a small amount of resources, and there's no need to load the virtual machine or the interpreter. It has a recycling mechanism. That means we don't have to manage the storage, which can reduce the possibility of memory leakage. Let's see some variable type in Go language. The variables is used for storing data, and different variables may be different in its data type. After more than half of centuries development in the programming, the language has formed several types. The common variables are character type, integer, float type, and Boolean type. And each variable in Go language has its own type, and the variables must be declared before they are used. For example, there are 4 variables A, B, C, D. A is string type, B is int type, and C is float 64, and D is bool. At the same time, in the Go language, we can declare the type in batch. because each time we have to use var keyword, which will be cumbersome. So we can do it in a batch.
我们可以在里面声明 string 类型int 类型浮点型或者是布尔型都可以。来看一下短变量声明，在函数的内部，我们可以使用更简略的方法更
And let's move on to the short variable declaration.
这个方式去声明变量，并且郑老师能听到我说话吗？我这边显示我网络不太好。
我这边可以听到，正常。
够了吗？哦，现在呢？稍等哈，帮我调一下。
Okay, please wait for a minute. There's something wrong with the internet.
好。我重新讲一下吧。在函数的内部，我们可以使用简略的方式来
In the function, we can use an easy or simpler way to initialize the variable. And this is the form.
变量的值跟变量的值这个其实就等同于，比如说我们声明了一个 a 的字符串类型
Is a colon and the equal.
字符串，其实它就等同于用 where 关键字
And that is inequivalent to use var variable name
是一样的。
that equals to the variable value.
然后我们来看一下常量。
And let's move on to the
常
constant.
量和这个变量是不一样的。常量呢是指这个横
Constant means the value will not be changed. It is used to define the value that will not be changed during the running of the program.
声明和变量的声明
The declaration of variable and constant are very similar.
常
We
量
just replace the var with
就是
const.
说常量在定义的时候必须出实话。
That means the
这个就是我们
constant must be initialized when it is defined.
const 这样这个关键字，然后声明一个变量，变量
A
名
const and there will be a variation and it has its value.
下面我们来看一下 Go
Let's move on to the Go language basic types.
Go 语言的基础类型，它包括
Well, the basic types include bool,
还有 byte、
byte,
rounding、string、
brownie, string, int, uint, int a, uint a, and etc.
一些变量，只是长度不一样，然后还有浮点型，还有一些
And float and complex.
我们首先来看一下整形。
First, we will talk about the integer. It can be divided into two types. According to its length, it can be divided into int 8, 16, and 32, and 64.
分别是 uint
And in its symbolized, it's uint 8, 16, 32, and 64,
变量其实是其
which
实
is
是差不多的，
similar to the solidity we mentioned yesterday.
是有符号的整形，
Is the symbolic or non-symbolic.
还有一个无符号的整形。Go 语言还支持两种浮点型
The Go language supports two float type, the float 32 and float 64. These two data formats follow the IEEE 754 standard, and the maximum range of floating points of float 32 is 3.438.
这里就定义了两个
For example, we have defined
两个 float 类型
two float variables.
float， 但是
One is pi,
我们也可
that
以
is
定义为
3.14,
定义一个 float 642.17，
and the float 64, 2.71.
的这个范围是不一样的。
And the range of these two types are different. The Go language also supports a complex. It has an imaginary part and a real part. And the complex include the real and the virtual parts. These two are the 32 and 64. And it also has a Boolean type. In Go language, the Go language declares a Bool type data in Bool type. It has only true and false, two types. Generally speaking, we use Bool to do the judgment. And next is the character string. We use UTF-8 coding, and the value is in the dual quotation. For example, there's the str1, str2, and the first is hello. You can use both Chinese and English. And this is the element of the string is called the character. The value is in a single quotation. And rolling represents the UTF-8, and the byte represents the ASC character. A running type is a special int32, and in Go language, it has under a special processing to facilitate the handling of UTF-8 characters, such as Chinese. And we have two codes, hello and ni hao. And we use the len to acquire the length of the code. If we use runner, it's 2. That means one Chinese character refers to one UTF-8. And we'll talk about the function of Go language. The function is a code block that can complete specific functions, and it can be repeatedly used. And we use func to define it. And the format is as follows. The func, the name of the function, the parameter, the return value, and the function. The function name consists of letters, names, or lower lines, but the first one cannot be numbers. And under the same package, the name of the function cannot be the same. Which is different to the language that can be rewrite. And the name of the parameter, which consists of the parameter variables and parameter type. Different parameters can be separated with a comma. And the return value consists of the variable and the type composition. It can be omitted, and you can omit the return value variable. Multiple return values can be separated by comma. And about the function body, it is used to achieve the specific function. The core of the function. After we defined the function, we can call the function by this form. And this is the function of adding up and the function of say hello. The code is very easy, and in the core of function, we use the name of the function and a bracket. If there's a parameter, we can add the parameter in the bracket. If there are two or more than two adjacent parameter types in a function, so we can omit the previous parameter type and only remain the last one. For example, this is a function. It has a, b, c, three parameters, which are all int type. So we can omit the type ab. The variable parameter, that is, when the number of function parameter is not fixed, we can add an ellipsis to label it as variable parameters. For example, a with ellipsis, and it's the int type. In the core of this function, we can add two or three parameters, or even we don't have to add the parameters, just like the code. The return value in the Go language can be multiple. When there are multiple languages, we have to use the bracket to include it together. For example, we have a function, and there it has two return value. One is sum and the second is sub. That means sum up and subtract. It's a return value of two int type. So in the defining of the function, we have to use a bracket to include these two return value. In addition, the return value, when the return value is given, when the function definition is equivalent to declare the value, and the function body does not need to be replaced. For example, the return value has two variables. One is sum and the other one is sub. Then actually we have declare over there. So in the function, we can use it directly, which is different from in the last slide that we declare by using the column. And the global variables is used to define the variables outside the function, which is effective during the whole process of the entire procedure. For example, we have two variables outside the function. One is global int and it's global 3. That is a global variable, and in the function we can have access to the outside variables because they are global variables. Throughout the program's process, it is effective. The opposite of global variable is local variable. That is used to be defined in the function, which cannot be accessed outside the function. For example, we use text local and log when we have a local variables. In the function, we can have access to it, but we cannot have access to it in other functions. Function is also a parameter. It can also be a type. It can be a parameter of another function. And in the Go language, we can understand it as a type of function. For example, we define a function add and the parameter have two int and the return value is int. And when we call the function, and we have the call a function and define a exec function. When we are calling the exec function, the third parameter is a function. The third parameter is a function. In the function, we can define the anonymous function. That means it has no name. For example, we define the anonymous function, but this function has no name. So we have to save it in a variable. Or we add a bracket to symbolize that we should directly execute this function. The third is the BGO. And as for BGO, we will use it during the competition. The application right during the competition is under BGO. It's a quick developing application of Go language. It can be used to develop API, web, and some backend services. It is a structure with some characteristics of Go, such as interface or struct. Some common commands, such as version. We can view the version of the B tool, and we can do the migration of the database, or to create a API project. And we use bnew can create a BGO web project. And when we use brun, we can launch or start the BGO service. And I don't mention how to install or construct the project in B, because in the competition, we will install it for the contestant and construct it for the contestant. beforehand. So the contestant only have to do the procedure. So we don't have to worry about the installation of the project. So this is the directory structure of BGO. It is just like the picture. For example, if we have a Hello World BGO project, it has a configuration config. It's the configuration files. And there's a controllers. It's the used for the logic of the transaction, and the models which are used for the storage of the data. For example, when we use in some tiny or small transactions, we can write the model in the controller. And this is a router. And this is used for URL. And the static is it includes CSS, some images, and JS. And very important that in the view there are some model files. There are some template code. And the main is the access for the procedure. As for the configuration file, under this file, it includes the configuration of the entire project. So we can have the name of the project, the monitoring address, the operation mode, and the database connection. Using the configuration file can help us dynamically modify the project to avoid the repeated compilation code in every modification. And as for the routers, and it refers to the routers after the BGO. It is used to reflect URL into the controller. And the first parameter is URL. That is the user's requested address. As for this part, there's no parameters, and the second parameter is controller. That is to say, if the user is in the root catalog, the router will be transmitted to request the man controller, and the code in the controller will render each interface. The controller, when writing the controller, the structure must be declared at first. Usually we will name it as main controller. And the structure combines the web controller, and the main controller has all the methods of web controller include get, post, put, and delete, etc. Through rewriting these methods, we can achieve our transactions. And the example is a get. Example, we have defined the main controller.
它内部组合了 BGO 这个 controller，
Inside it has the BGO controller,
然后我们的 main controller 呢就
and the main controller struct has includes all the structures of the BGO controller, includes get, post, put, and delete. And as for get, we write an example for get.
我们写一个 get 方法的一个示例，我们会传两个参数啊，两个参数。
We will upload two parameters.
webset
So the first is
这样
webset,
传一个参数，这个是它
the variable, and it's the value of it.
然后我们渲染的页面是
And
index.tpl， 这个 TPL
the index.tpl is the rendered face.
然后 get 方法的内部呢，就是我们具体的业务逻辑啊，我们这里
And inside the gate is the transaction logic.
如何输出数据
So how do we put out the data? So the C data is a map used to store and to output the data. And the keys is the interface type.
数据的 map。然后我们再多讲一下吧。然后这里我们传了两个值啊到前
And
端。
for this part, we have two values.
我们在前端就可以用这个，比如说我们要获取 website 啊 ，website 就可以获取。
For example, if we want to have the website, we must have the value to its variables.
view 就是在
And
前面我们
this is view. View means when writing the controller,
写过这样
before we write the controller,
长代码就是 C 就是这一句是 C 点 TPL name
the c.tpl name equals to index.tpl.
这个呢就是我们所设置的一个模板文件。
That is a template.
我们设置的一个前端的一个模板文件。BGO 采用了 Go 语言内置的
The BGO has adapted
在控制
its inner engine, and in the controller,
把 website 和 email
the website and email has been copied,
复制给了
has been
data，
given to the c.data, and in the complete,
模板文件中就可以访问
we can
变量里
have access to the website and email through the variables.
来展示我们的这个展示这两个就可以获取这两个字符串了。
And
怎么样去
so that we can have these two character strings.
格式就为就是这个
And the format is like the two bracket, and there's a dot key.
变量点我们这个变量点我们这个 key 举个例子哈，我们来看刚才那个
And for example,
这个就是我们前端 index.tpl 这个模板。
this is the template for index.tpl.
我们比如说我们要获取，我们要显示我们的这个这个标题，然后我们
If we want to show our title, so we must use these two brackets and the dot website to get
后端窗脑传进来的这个值
the value from the front end.
静态文件
And the static file.
包含了很多这个静态文件
The website often contains many static files, includes pictures, JS, CSS,
这些图片都保存
and
在 static
in default, we will save it in the
图
static
片的这些
directory.
图片的这些文件我们都会保存在 static 这个文件夹下面。在浏览器中，我们可以输入
in the browser, we can
输入这个地址，
type
输入这个地
this
址，我们就可以把
website
static
so then we can have access to the static directory.
比如我们想访问这个 reload
For example, if we want to have access to reload,
通过这个 URL 去访问
so we can have access through this URL.
慢点 ts 这个文件的内容。最后我们来讲一下如何使用
And finally, we'll talk about how to use Go SDK to call the smart contract.
那首先我们来了解一下什么是
First, what is SDK?
在 Physical Because 里面
In physical because
区块链，它向外
blockchain,
布了很多的
it
我们的外
exposes its interfaces to the outside, so the outside transaction procedure can use the SDK provided by physical because to call this interface.
开发者只需要根据
The developer only have to, in accordance with the demand of its application transaction, and choose the SDK in certain language and use the API of SDK to do the programming. For example, the controller is actually an application. It uses Java SDK to call the physical because interface
从而实现了这个我们的常用的这个控制台所有的一些功能。
to realize the functions of the controller.
查看区块的高度
For example, to see the height of the blockchain or to deploy the contract.
Physical Because 提供了多种语言的SDK。
The physical because has provided SDK of different languages.
它是一
For example, Java SDK is very stable, very powerful in its function. The Web3 SDK, the Python SDK, Node.js SDK,
Go SDK
C# SDK, and Go SDK. But for there, generally, mainly we use the Go SDK.
以下介绍。
So we mainly introduce the Go SDK.
Go SDK 呢，它
The
主
Go
要有
SDK
功能
has following functions
提
to provide
供了 IPC 的 Go API。
the Go API that calls the physical because JSON RPC, provides the compilation of the context so we can compile the solidity, compile solidity into ABI and the bin file,
然后再把
and then transform into the Go contract file.
需要调用的 Go 合约文件这样子我们就可以在我们的 Go 的应用程序里面
So we, in the Go application, we can call the smart contract.
然后它还提供了部署
It also provides the deployment and the call of code contract file through the Go API.
提供了 Physical
And it
Because
provides a Go API that provide
的
preset
协议。
profile lead
另外，它还提供了一个
contract
控制台的一个类似于控制台的
to compile the contract.
类似于控制台这么工具。
And it also provide a channel that's kind of like a controller.
进行一个交互。
So the users can interact with the blockchain conveniently and quickly in the demand line.
我们来看一下如何编译
So let's see how to compile the
叫
contract,
编译吧，如何把这个 Solidity 文件转译成我
how
们
to
需要
translate the solidity into the Go language.
比如我们这里编写了一个
We have a asset.sol smart contract, and we have to compile it
编译器
into
版本的编译器
ABI and bin file.
API 文件和 bin 文件。这个 SOLC 就是这个编译器。
The SOLC is compiler.
杠杠 bin 把它编译成 API 和 bin 文件。杠 O 就指的是我们当前就是我们要输出的文件的路径我们输出在当前路径下我们要编译的是哪一
The
个
O refers to the path where the file is in.
这样子呢，我们就会成功的编
So in this way, we can successfully have ABI and bin. If it succeed, it was says the compiler run successful. So under this catalog, it will have asset.abi, asset.bin. And secondly, we will use the API gene tool to convert the ABI bin and asset bin and asset ABI into asset go. For example, we will transfer it into asset.go, and the ABI gene is a tool. The bar bin it means, and the bar ABI and the PKG refers to the package name of the asset go, and we will output it into asset.go. After we done it, we will see there's a asset.go file. So in this way, we have realized the conversion of the solidity into the Go file. And this is the application. So how to deploy a smart contract? This is a simple way to deploy the contracts. This function is used to deploy the asset contract, and the return value is the address of the deployment contract. This is the function for the contract deployment. So we will do the decipher and analysis the file. Is the standard way of the official SDK. So through the parameters in the configuration to get access to the blockchain node, and through the asset to the asset package, we can have the method to deploy the contract so that we can achieve the deployment. The return value is the address of the contract and the trade hash. So how to deploy a smart contract? How to call a smart contract? After we deploy it, how do we call it? There we have a code that is how to call the asset smart contract to use the function to get access to the user, and the parameter is the address. The return value is a big int, which represent the balance in the user's account. Similarly, in the deployment and the call, we do all these procedures on chain. So first step is to get access to the chain. and to do the analysis of the file, and in accordance with the parameter, then get access to the node.
然后我们去获取我们刚才部署智能合约的合约地址
And then we can get access to the smart contract address and then load the address.
然后这个 asset C 系呢，它是一个围绕Solidity
The asset
自动
is
生成的一个构绑地自动生成的一个构绑地，它具有预设
a
的
goal
调用和交易的一个
in the solidity by solidity
我们可以通过这个 asset 点
through a seat
来构
的
建
C 系。
那么可以通过 asset C 系来调
Through
用
the asset session,
这个智能合约里的函数
we can call the functions in the smart contract. For example, if we have the select function,
查询根据这个用户的账户
this is
查询
to
用户的资
look
产
for the
给它
balance
调
of
用
the
的
user.
参数
So we can call this function. It has a return value,
有返回值
the result,
这个就是我们自己在业务里面去实现的逻辑
and this is the logic we achieve in the transaction.
这样就达成了我们智能合约Go SDK 从编译转译
And so we have achieved the compilation and deployment and the core of the smart contract.
完整的一个流程完整的一个流程行我今天
Okay, so
内容就到此
this is all for today's.
看各位选手或者专家
And
对今天还有什么
so, do any experts and contestants have any question?
如果其实如果大家对这个 Go SDK 不太熟悉的话，因为
If you are not familiar with Go SDK,
已经明确提到了
and in the document, we have mentioned that the module 3 will use the Go SDK
我们的DAPP 开发
to do the development of DAPP.
所以说我们会用到 BGO 的这个
So
框架
we will use the BGO
Go SDK
web structure and Go SDK. So you can look for the official document and the details and introductions about Go SDK. And there, I'll just do a brief introduction, and you can look for the official document. It will be a more detailed version.
比赛会不会变成线上这个问题可以去这个我们的商务群里这个微信群里去问一下。大家有什么关于这个技术上面的问题，我这边可以做一个解答。
And do you have any questions?
演示什么呢？ 这一个的话，其实官方文档上面有，他说的很详细啊，说的很详细。而且我这边如果要去写这个代码的话，其实也是，可能花的时间也会比较多，可能也花的时间比较多。这个去看别人去写的话，还不如自己实际的去练啊，实际的去练一下。关于 TPL 就是那个前端模板的部分，呃，应该是不需要选手去写的啊，因为我们主要是考这个，因为我们主要是考察选手这个区块链方面的这个专业啊，可能会包括像一些智能合约啊，智能合约的这个编码啊，然后后端如何调用智能合约啊，主要是这一部分。然后前端的话，应该不需要大家去写。而且再说一下，就是因为整个比赛的过程中，我们会把这个环境啊给各位同学搭建好。
During the whole process of the competition, we will provide a
选手
good
只需要
environment.
关注业务的逻辑啊，实现部分
Okay,
功能即可啊，并不是说从零开始
so
去
the contestants ask whether the teachers can
因为时间
do
所限
a
是不会
can do a trial or to do a demonstration for the Go language practice, and the teacher says that it will take a lot of time, and you can go to the official document to see the more detailed one, and we will provide a good competition environment for you, so you needn't have to worry too much about the instrument of the application or the program. You're welcome.
是的，是的，模块 A、B、C
And the contestants ask a question that the arrows in module A, B, C, whether they
是分了
are
这三个模块
transmitted. No, the answer is no.
11月4号啊，会在11月4号进行。
The module A will be on November 4th.
C 模块
Module B is on November 5th morning, and the C is on the afternoon of November 5th. So these are totally three different modules. These are evaluated and judged independently. So it's unrealistic to do all the code for the contestants because of the time limit. So we will only have part of the code that needs and part of the functions that needs the contestant to do, not all of them. We will provide most of the code.
我这边结束屏幕共享了，然后大家有什么问题，可以继续提
So
问。
I'll turn off the screen sharing, and if you do have any questions, you can answer.
国外的选手，是专家还是选手？我前天在 Telegram 上面提出来的问题，我会在明天给到你一个准确的答复。会在明天给到你一个准确的答复。
So as for the foreign contestants, you have asked me a question in the Telegram, and I will give you a certain answer tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We will wait for your answers.
Okay, thank you.
OK。看一下各位选手和专家还有什么问题没有？如果大家都没有什么问题的话
So if there's no question left, this is the end of today's training, and tomorrow is the last day of the training. We will do the explanation and do a demonstration of the competition platform, and we will process and do the demonstration of part of the code, and we will give you the standard of the evaluation to help the contestants to better understand the platform and to get to know the competition environment and the evaluation standard. Okay, so there's no question left. We will call it a day. This is the end of today's training. Thank you for your cooperation, dear experts and contestant.